Welcome to Ask Your Academic. Today's session will cover the MSc Medical Genetics and Genomics, and we're joined by Professor Gerhard May, and he's going to run through all the questions that we've had submitted beforehand. If you've got any additional questions throughout, please feel free to use the chat box and we'll do our best to cover them all off. If you've got any questions that are around funding, accommodations, things like that, I'm going to post some helpful links into the chat box for you. And if you can't find your answer in there, we've got an online postgraduate event coming up on the 7th of May. So that would be a really good place to go if you can't find the answer you're looking for. And we are recording this session, so don't panic. If you miss anything, we'll cover off a lot of information. You'll be able to watch that back in your own time, and we'll get that recording sent out in the next few days for you. So we don't have long, so I think if we can do a quick intro, and Gerhard, if you could introduce the programme, that would be great.
Okay, welcome everyone. So as Naomi said, my name is Gerhard May. And to introduce myself, I'm originally from Germany. I did my undergrad and PhD in Germany, and that was in bacterial genetics, actually. So you can see already that it's possible to move between fields quite drastically. So I've moved to Scotland in 1990. So I've lived in Glasgow since October 1990. I'm now the program director for the MSc in Medical Genetics and Genomics. This is, like, as far as I'm aware, all master's programs at Glasgow, a one-year program. This in master's programs over the 1 year, you will be studying a total of 180 credits. This is a sort of random way of valuing how much you study. Now, I can show you, if you want to know about the program itself, I can show you now. Oh, Naomi, you need to let me share my screen.
That should be you. I was just doing it there as you spoke.
Okay, yes, so you should see a slide now, a PowerPoint slide. This is the year, how it looks, the academic year for our master's program. The program starts usually in the sort of second or third week of September, and it ends at the end of August. In our program, we have a total of 5 taught courses. So there is a separation between taught courses and a research project. The research project is, let me just find the pointer. The research project is that red box here at the end, and I'll get to that in a minute. These other boxes are taught courses which run during the semester, and each course is allocated a certain number of credits. So the whole of the first semester is one single big course, which is worth 60 credits. So that's a third of the whole program. In the second semester, from January, you'll be studying actually 3 courses. The first one, I should say a little bit about the courses themselves. This is the main genetic disease course, where you'll be introduced to the more commonly known and more common genetic conditions. This is also a course where you'll be taught by a mix of academics from the university, but also staff who are employed by the United Kingdom's National Health Service, the NHS. So these are people who actually work for a healthcare provider. They do a lot of the diagnostic testing in Glasgow. So we are lucky that we have a very strong input from the people who are actually at the coalface and do that work. Case investigations is a group work, a course where students work in groups and prepare a report based on a genetic case. SNP assay design is a lab-based course. So this is one where you will be working on your own little research project. You'll design a genotyping test to genotype a particular single nucleotide polymorphism in human DNA. this is also very self-directed in that there are no specific times. You have to manage your own time, book time slots in the lab, turn up when you have booked your time slots, and do your work there. Then there is an optional course that runs through the second half of the second semester, and there are currently 3 different courses that our students can take. So it's a choice of 3 different courses. Clinical genomics is run by our own team. Next generation sequencing, bioinformatics, and cancer microenvironment are courses from other teams. All 3 of these courses are open to students from other master's programs as well. We're just in the middle of this course now, the disease screening course. That's a short course, which is just now after the Easter break. There's a short break here at the beginning of April of about 2 or 3 weeks. So we are now in the middle of that. That will end in 2 weeks' time, in fact, that course. And then all the taught courses are finished. We'll start then on the 13th of May with the research project. Students are now being allocated to different projects, and then the whole rest of the academic year, students will be working on this research project.
Perfect,
Yes.
thank you. That was a really good way of actually visualizing it to see like when each thing takes place. So thanks for sharing that. You mentioned those optional classes there. When do students choose them? Is that right at the beginning, or do they get a bit of chance to sort of
That takes a
decide?
while. That's not right at the beginning. And in fact, we have always a problem with students wanting to choose stuff and then they can't on Moodle. So students being really keen and wanting to choose everything, but things are not available actually. So the optional courses are usually chosen towards the end of the first semester. So sort of mid-November, I would expect that's when there will be an introductory session where students get information about what is happening in the different optional courses, and that's when they then can make their choices. Now, not all the optional courses are entirely open. I have to say that, for example, that cancer microenvironment course is actually capped at a certain maximum number, and the students on the MSc cancer biology have they have to take that course. So there usually are not as many places on that course as there are students who are interested.
Perfect, thanks for that. And you mentioned the research project. In terms of choosing titles, supervisors, could you tell us a wee bit about how that works?
Okay. Supervisors are asked relatively early in the academic year. So that happens in October, that we are asked so academics are asked to provide project titles and how many students each one of us is able to take on. That all happens behind the scenes. Students don't see any of this. Sometime in February, usually, is when students get information about all the projects that are available to their degree program. We are part of a cluster of biomedical sciences programs. So there's our program, biomedical sciences, cancer research, biotechnology, bioinformatics. They are sort of all in a cluster, and these projects are collected, and then students can look at them, and students can then, towards the end of February, make, I think it might have been actually March, I try to remember now, make choices. So students in the system that we're using at the moment, students make up to 5 choices, their top choices, but they also are asked to pick topics and research areas, because we can't guarantee that a student gets a project out of their 5 top choices. But if we know what a student is interested in, then we can always try to allocate a project in that field, in that area of research. The allocation itself is quite complex because we're talking about over 300 students in these different programs which need to be allocated. I think it's now today or tomorrow that our students, the current year, are going to get notified of their project choices. So that's quite a long, drawn-out process.
Yeah, although that's quite a lot of students to allocate to, so you can kind of see where that time's used. In terms of hours on class, I know it's a full-time program, but we're always asked, what does this a week look like for a student? Like, how many hours should they expect to be in class, or on campus?
Okay, sorry. You know that as I said, I'm German, so for me, speaking in English is still in foreign, so I get a dry mouth very quickly. Yes, how long? Now, the whole credit system, the Scottish University Higher Education credits, 1 credit is a notional time effort of a student of 10 hours. So in the first semester, for example, you have a 60-credit course that is a notional effort of 600 hours that includes actual face-to-face teaching, lectures, tutorials, lab classes, all sorts of stuff, but also self-directed study time where you work on your own and revise and meet with other students to discuss coursework and so on and so on. Now, 600 hours in the first semester consists of 12 weeks, so you can actually calculate how much that is. So we expect really students to work a minimum of 40 hours a week on their course, on their studying, and it's most likely more. And then some students, high flyers, can all absorb this very quickly, and they don't need that much time. But on the whole, students should expect this to be a full-time job. But these 50 hours, you're not going to be in class the whole time. One of the questions that I expect to come up is, where is the teaching happening? And I'll show you that in a minute. Our teaching is in a university hospital complex, the majority of it. And that is a little bit of a trek to from where the university's student accommodations are. So we try to avoid timetabling things on every day because students don't like to come into class for just an hour or something like that. So what we tend to do, we have 3 or so fairly busy days where students have to be there from relatively early. But then there are 2 days, usually 1 to 2 days per week, which students don't have to come into class, which are then free for self-directed study. Now, do you want me to show you where the
Yeah, I was just going to
class?
say that's probably a good time to go to that question.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. So you've seen this picture already. This is a screenshot of Google Maps of Glasgow. So you can see here, that's the River Clyde. It flows from east to west towards the sea. Here is the city center. That's where the big railway stations are. That's where big cinemas are. Lots of restaurants, bars, clubs, stuff like this. This area here is where the university's main campus is. Now, this distance here is, what do you think, Naomi? 2 miles?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
yeah, it is
it's
well connected.
yes, it's well connected with public transport, but you'd probably walk for half an hour to get from here to there, right? To give you an idea about the distances. So university main campus is here, but our teaching is over here. This is the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital. It's a massively big hospital. It's the biggest one in Scotland, and it's one of the biggest in the UK. It has also the diagnostic labs for most of Scotland. It's one of the biggest and busiest labs in the UK. So this is quite a distance here, right? So most of our teaching is happening there, and I've shaded in gray here where the main university accommodation, student accommodation areas are. My experience is that students who come for a master's program find it easiest to just go for a student accommodation in one of the students' halls. So from these areas, you'll have to take a bus to get across to the hospital. So there's a tunnel here under the river. It is a little bit of a trek. So I mean, not far, right? It's 15 minutes by bus from the main campus to over to the hospital. But we don't really want students to have to do this for a single teaching session.
That's a really good way of visualizing it, and it probably looks further away than it is. But like you say, it's not far. It's just, yeah,
Yeah, well,
you're moving about a little bit.
just as an illustration, last week I was teaching on the main campus first, and then in the afternoon was teaching at the hospital. And I was on that day, because it happened to be a nice day, I was actually cycling. It took me 20 minutes on my bike. So it's less than 20 minutes. So it's actually really quite relatively close together.
Yeah. And it's a nice way of seeing the city as well, isn't it?
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
not the best sights, but yeah, you see the sights. We had a question actually about the programme, and someone was asking if you get any pharmacy graduates who take the medical genetics programme.
This is an interesting question. When I saw that question, I asked a number of my colleagues. I personally don't remember a pharmacy student, a student with a pharmacy undergraduate background in our program. My colleagues, one who has retired, has said that she seems to remember a couple, but not many overall. I know that I have seen applications by students, many applications are sent to me to evaluate if students have the necessary background. And I do recall seeing a couple of applications from students who have a pharmacy background. I don't remember now what my impression was, but my concern always is that students have not enough of a molecular biology background. And I think that is probably the case in a traditional pharmacy degree as well. I have to be absolutely clear here. This medical genetics is a very molecular biology degree. The methods that are being used for genetic diagnosis are molecular biology techniques, and a student who doesn't have a good foundation in molecular biology is going to struggle. We will help, but there is only that much that we can do. So I think everyone who considers this program needs to be going into it with open eyes. You need to know that there is an expectation that you have a reasonable background in molecular biology. That means that you understand what DNA looks like. That means that you know how RNA is made from the information in DNA, how proteins are made. You need to have some sort of background understanding of human cell structures. So you need to be the person who considers, do I know enough about this? I can't help any more about the pharmacy background, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But yeah, thanks for that. I think you're right. It's worth really exploring what you're getting into. And if you do actually, I don't know if that person's currently on live, but if you do have any, need any further information, it would be a good idea probably to contact the administrator of the programme if you need any further information or would like to discuss anything. And you can find those details on the programme webpage, and I'll pop them in the chat actually as well for you. Someone asked if students get access to any material that's taught in class before the class starts, just to give them the opportunity to read anything.
Yes, we are expected to make materials, if possible, available beforehand. Not everything is going to be available beforehand. There are some, say, clinical problem sessions where the professor who teaches them uses real-life clinical cases. This material will not be available online because there are concerns about patients' confidentiality. Other materials that may not be available before a session, well, will not be available, are group work. So if you're having a scheduled group work session and there will be some work associated with that, that won't be available before the session. Sometimes lecturers, and I'm like that as well, sometimes lecturers get their material ready last minute. And so it does happen that your lecture slides, for example, are not available before a lecture. But usually we get them onto the virtual learning environment, the Moodle web pages, at least 2 days beforehand.
Perfect. And someone that we've had a few questions asking about careers, but someone has asked, can this program help me become a clinical geneticist?
Yes. Okay. I think the short answer is yes. The in the UK, the National Health Service runs their own training programs for their clinical scientist posts. There are a number of what they call STP, scientist training program courses all over the UK. These are all 3-year programs with different topics. There may be molecular biology diagnostics, there may be management, there's genetic counseling, lots of different topics. These are highly competitive, but our program prepares students very well for this. So there are two main sort of directions that our students would like their career to go in, right? That's my experience. There is one proportion of a significant proportion of the class who would like to go towards research, maybe in academia, maybe in a pharmaceutical company. But an equally large proportion of the class would like to work for a healthcare provider, for example, the UK NHS. Our students on the whole are pretty successful, with always a handful of our students who get into these scientist training programs. But as I said, it's competitive. So yes, to become a clinical scientist, that means a person who looks at data that are generated with patients' samples and who will write reports for clinicians themselves so that the clinicians then can interact with the patients. So to become a clinical scientist is certainly one of the career paths that is very much open to our students. Some of our former students run whole diagnostic labs now worldwide. So our students have been reasonably successful. Now, I'm careful here because in the current year, we have 44 students. I suspect there will be about 5 who may get into one of these training programs. But that's a good, from my point of view, a good result, actually.
Yeah, thank you. And then we're always asked, what can students do to prepare for starting their MSc in September?
Okay. Again, I'm going to share my screen again. So, firstly, if you accept the MSc, the offer, and you register, you matriculate, you pay your fees, you register on Moodle, that is our virtual learning environment, that's when you will get access from me on this preparatory course. So this is a screenshot from our virtual learning environment. This course, Genetics Revision, this is of course last year's course, or maybe 2 years ago. That course will be open to you then, once you have registered, and you can work through some of this material, especially here, this button here leads to a sort of learning lesson that revises largely the background in molecular biology. So that's one thing that students who have registered can do then and prepare themselves. And I actually think that, well, I'm not just think, this is something that's very worthwhile doing, because we will actually give students a little test within the first week of arriving here, where we test molecular biology background, because then those who are weak will get offered extra tutorials, extra help. Now that is, of course, not compulsory, that's just optional, but I'm just telling you this, these preparations, this particular Moodle preparation is worthwhile to do. The other thing that students can do is this article. This is a little booklet that the Biochemical Society in the UK has published. This is published by Portland Press in this journal called Essays in Biochemistry. It's a free download. That's my name. Leah is a current colleague of mine. Maria is the person who has retired. Joanna is also in our college, and she's a cancer scientist. So we have written this together, this booklet, which is very much based on our first semester genetic disease course, and in my view is a very good preparation for the MSc. I don't know if Naomi can put that link into the chat, or somehow make it available after the.
What to do actually, I'll get you to send those slides to me afterwards, and I'll pop them in the email that I send the recording out on, just so it's
Yes,
easy
well,
for people to
that's the
click
easy
through. We'll
thing to
do
do.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Perfect. Well, that is actually us now at 10 o'clock. So we have covered, I think, all of the questions there, and yeah, we've not had any additional ones through our chat box. So hopefully everybody's questions have been covered. Like I said, if you think of anything else afterwards, or if you've got anything that's a bit more sort of specific, you can contact the program administrator, and they do a great job of getting through all the inquiries that we get. And yeah, I will send the recording out to you in the next few days so that you can watch this back. But yeah, thanks very much, Gerhard, for taking the time out to talk to us all today. Thanks to all that have attended and registered for the webinar, and we hope to see you all in September. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.